Greetings, everyone. My name is Nikki Brown, and I absolutely love collecting children's books, especially those with characters that look like myself.
Hello, and welcome. This is Alexandra Loves, aka Aya Iwo Ryosa, and I am with my furry cosmic guardians, Cyrus and Bisu, joyfully coming to you from the Moon Garden Temple, where wisdom is nourished, awakening is embraced, and fun is encouraged. And our website is up. It's at themoongardentemple.com. That's where I can be found. Thank you for joining us for the Woke Wisdom podcast today. I'm presenting the last 3 episodes of the first evolution of this podcast, and I'm so happy to be sharing these with you, my collaborators, my family out there. We experienced a lot. We had priestesses and medicine women and intuitive healers and sovereign business developers and justice advocates and animal whisperers and blessed grandmas and poets and so much more. What a blessing. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for being present. It's my pleasure that we're exploring and evolving together in this world that grows more curious every day. And please, if you resonate with what you hear on this podcast and you like this experience, like and subscribe and share with your friends. And most importantly, please review this podcast on Apple. That's so important. It helps us tremendously. So please just do a few clickety clicks. And one last thing before we get into the first of these last 3 episodes, I just want to share an audio project I'll be presenting at the top of the new year with everyone. It's like a mini-series podcast, and it's called Audio Storybook, Collective Wisdom and Revelations from Africa and Her Diaspora. I'll be presenting these interviews from people all over the continent of Africa and her diaspora all over the world. And I ask them these questions about the culture, the people, the self-expression, nourishment, challenges, and inspirations. And if you like this podcast, the Woke Wisdom podcast, you're going to love the audio storybook. So I will drop a preview into the Woke Wisdom podcast feed so you'll see where you can listen to the audio storybook when it's available. My guest today is a clown. I mean, literally, she is a clown. She's the first Black clown in Portland and has been very active in the clown community here. Her goal is to promote cultural pride and awareness among Black community with special emphasis on engaging children of diverse backgrounds. She's worked tirelessly through North and Northeast Portland, advocating for the importance of literacy among Black children, with special attention on connecting Black children to books that support and validate Black children's experience. Yes, I needed that when I was a kid. I'm so glad she's doing this work. She started Black Storytime at a community coffee shop that ended with an early childhood Kwanzaa celebration. And let me tell you, the events that she holds are so beautiful and family friendly. So if you're here in Portland and you can check it out, please go. You can find all of her information in the show notes. She also promotes Black girls learning how to eat healthy and cooking for themselves. So she is bringing families up. She's working with the youth up, and that's so beautiful. It's my deepest pleasure to bring you this conversation because I learned a lot from her process and just how she looks at the world. It's so beautiful. Friends, please take a deep breath and help me welcome Nikki Brown, the clown.
So Nikki, if you could be an animal or just a non-human, it could be anything, what would you be and why?
A non-human. Oh, I would like to be, I would be a butterfly. I go back and forth. I was going to say a butterfly or a hummingbird. To the characteristics of one, of course, a butterfly is, goes through this transformation where it is a caterpillar and it does this cocoon. And I experienced that being obviously a human and a clown. And so when I'm not dressed as the clown, I just typically just wear all black, not any type of designer, anything.
Yeah.
And I usually hibernate away from the crowd, the public, and then when it's time for performance, parades, story times, I come out very colorful. So my two roles are two different. And so, but I was going to say a hummingbird because A hummingbird is one of the few birds that can fly backwards and he moves really fast.
Okay.
Very
Okay.
fast, and they can migrate really far. So for me, I do move really quickly, but
Yes.
I'm really colorful. And if you catch me, you can kind of see the details in what I'm doing. Some
Yes.
people sometimes they think because I'm so busy, I couldn't be so as organized, and I don't have something's not and I just move differently.
Yes.
Just move differently. So I just kind of resonate with those two.
Okay, so for some reason, this is bringing up a 90s reference, which is Total Monet. Have you ever
Mhm.
heard this where like you don't see everything, but when you get up close, you can see everything? Do you remember that from
Right.
Clueless?
From Clueless. Yes, when you get up close, you can see everything.
Yeah. See,
Yes.
so that's really interesting because when I think, I mean, you've been clowning for a very long time, and like I've seen you at I want to say at work, but it's like at play, but it's at work at play.
Right.
and and like from the outside, I totally like it's one of those sort of things where we take it for granted, like the work that actually goes into clowning, connecting, even if there's like a comedy involved with it, like it looks so sometimes from the outside like fun and maybe even a little ridiculous, because it's the nose and the hair and everything.
Right.
And so I can totally see how from far away people might not totally understand everything you're doing, but you work really deeply with children.
Yeah. I think it was like when I, got not recently, over the last 6 years, having a partner, getting married, and having someone who's very kind of A-type personality, lots of lists and everything. And so he
Mhm.
said he was really surprised, and he was able to give me the feedback because I don't even think I knew how deep I was, because a lot of times this type of work that I do isn't taken seriously. And so sometimes
Yes.
it's hard for me to even articulate that I do have this strong connection, and that I don't just show up and just throw anything on. In fact, everything that I have on is intentional, down from when I'm not a clown. When I'm dressed in all black and moving about my errands in the day, I'm dressed in black because I'm overstimulated by everything. I don't want to be distracted. I don't want to be, I don't want folks coming up to me necessarily. So I think, and I also don't want to make a lot of decisions. There was
Hmm.
a painter named Georgia O'Keeffe. I don't know if she's still alive, but she would get up every day and just wear black and just paint. She didn't want to spend
Yeah.
that extra time to do stuff. And I just when I heard that, I was like, yeah, I just want to just not be worried.
Whoa.
Just throw on some black leggings or black whatever, a shirt. So when I go shopping, I just grab that, unless it's for an event. And so I don't want to make a spectacle, because it's just too much. But my actual clown suit, it's very intentional. It's like
Yes.
a quilt made
Yes.
during slavery times, was intentional. Just from the naked eye, I took from that when I read stories about how it was actually a map. And I come from a lineage of Alabama raised family members who made quilts, and everything is laid out there for a reason. And so my costumes, each layer from afar, you're like, look at that funny stuff you got
Yeah,
on.
it's
Your
funny and it's beautiful
rainbow.
and fun to look at. Yeah.
But the person looking at it, it was designed for a specific human, and children know. Okay, children,
Yes. They don't miss anything.
no, they don't. So when I'm doing a story time and I sit down real low, I don't sit on a big throne. I sit down low, and they'll come up, and there's different textiles
Yes.
for a reason, and it changes differently to be able to get that, or the satin gloves that I wear,
Mhm.
so that when I touch the people, I'm respectful that each person I come in contact with deserves to be handled, because
Ah.
the community doesn't belong to me.
Yes.
I'm never arrogant enough to think that, and I want to show up with my best. And I grew up going to Sunday school with those, like, oh, we're gonna wear our satin gloves. So I
Yeah.
thought
The
there was
hats and the
time to use
gloves.
the hats and the gloves. So I was like, I want to show up with my best. So I do have that hidden talent, thing of showing up like that. So that's kind of, that
This
kind
is
of
this is like an art form. This is a really um I don't know if involved is the right word, but this is there's a lot of focus in this art form for you.
Definitely. And and I learned from other clowns that are Black, and we talk about it, and we get together sometimes weekly, sometimes daily, and we talk
Wow.
about why this color goes with this, or why we want to have this bouncing off of this. And it is deep. It's just like how grandmas used to get up and get dressed. Everything was with intention. And I
Yeah.
want to show up in the community with intentionality, because you only get that one chance, not to be a cliche, but you only get one chance to make an impression, and you just never
Yeah.
know who you're gonna see. So I don't just go to a thrift store and just grab anything. Like, I take my
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of where I'm at on that. And
That's so beautiful. I had no idea. I mean, it's like amazing, and it's also now that I've seen you perform, and I see your dedication. I see you on social media. By the way, everyone who's listening to this, please do follow Nikki Brown on social media. I'll put her stuff in the show notes, because she has really amazing, inspiring content, and content you can share with kids. Um, like I see it, and I never would have guessed this, but it's also, now that I've seen you perform and all this, like, it's actually not surprising. Of course, like, I'm watching an artist in motion. I'm watching someone who's incorporating history and ancestry and desire and passion with activism and creativity all in one. That's such a beautiful blessing you're sharing with us.
thank you. It's there's hidden pockets for me to make sure that I can properly have my ID and personal effects
Mhm.
hidden from that character during that time. There's a place where
Yeah.
my phone goes. I'm intentional on the fact that I have on a dress, but I actually have on pants. There's a bit of modesty that goes to it, because the fact that in this world, women in general can be overly sexualized, Black women, and so I have
Yeah.
to protect myself. So my uniform is actually a protection as well. Everything that was designed, and my father and aunt designed one of my second costumes based off of what I was trying to explain, and saying, okay, hey, my dress is a little shorter so that I can move and have the flexibility, but then pants that are loose enough that I could do all these crazy movements, jump on a table,
Yeah.
bend down and give a 2-year-old a hug, but sleeves flexible enough to be able to carry a
Wow.
baby. And there's just this rich tradition that, if you go into the Black community, if you're trusted, it's such a weird thing, but and that's another thing, going back to the gloves, is that people will hand me their babies and say, "Can you take a picture?" Like a president, like how a president would go through or whatever. I don't know. It's just, and so I took notice of that. That I was like, okay, I need sleeves that I could do that. And so having on these white gloves, and you don't want to have your bare hands, even though my gloves probably, now what we know about germs, but it's this delicate, soft, and I would see babies just kind of touching
Yeah.
gloves, and then the slightly cut out in one of the gloves, where so I can touch the screen of, of an iPhone, take pictures. So it's just all these little details that
Yeah.
sometimes people think like, oh, she just showed up, but it's also my connection to the community when I'm not the clown,
Yeah.
that so that by the time I do show up, I do know the people that I'm performing
Yeah.
for. Unlike when we invite outsiders to the community,
Mhm.
um, and so it's a different kind of thing. It's almost like I'm that unofficial aunt, that cousin that shows up to your fun cousin that shows up to the party, and I kind of like
Yeah.
fashion that character to that, because of course they see me, at the Safeway, they see me at the drugstore,
Oh yeah,
local.
everybody knows you.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And I try to be intentional too, to also
Yes.
go to events, and shop, with Black owned businesses, and
Yeah.
to create and make sure that, I'm also filling up my cup, so that when I do show up, that I'm not just taking, just,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
and that's I think that's important for for us as we build this new world is because you know we're conditioned to be so individualistic and also you know what, I don't judge anybody for that because that's the way things are set up around us. And also, like, we do want to feed our kids, we do want to make sure we're okay. Like, we are set to be, you know, a lot of us are kind of in survival, you know. And so to be able to create space in our life to be thinking about the community as well, because there are times in my life where I'm like, I just need to serve myself, you know.
I've been
And
there.
you know, and so it's like, okay, how can I, you know, first is like the not judging myself for that, going through that part, that
Right.
phase, that feeling. And then it's like, okay, how can I do both? How can I ensure that I'm okay and I'm moving where I want to go and have my resources and the community too? Can we do this together? And that's something I think is reflected. I see, not I think, I know I see it reflected in what you were doing and have been consistently doing for as long as I've known you and before. So I'm really appreciative of you walking this walk. And I also want to say a big ups. Thank you. Thank you for being a role model and
Mhm.
and you know, for little girls, something visual that's open and free and creative and fun that's not sexualized.
Thank you.
Like,
Right.
we need, please, yes, like, I really appreciate that. I was just reading a book actually that was talking about sort of the categories that in our mainstream communities, in our mainstream media, of the categories that Black women are presented as, and they're not flattering and they're not good for us or healthy for us, and it
No.
keeps perpetuating. So I'm just so grateful for you and this role, this artistic, creative, amazing, active role that you're playing. And I have to ask you, when you're the clown,
Mhm.
maybe this is a spiritual thing, I don't know. Do you ever go into sort of a meditation or a trance? Like, are there some time? I mean, you're obviously making conscious choices, but do you feel that there's like, I don't know how you look at the divine angel energy, whatever. Is there something at
Yeah.
play there when you're in this very focused artistic creation of yours?
Absolutely. I believe that it is definitely, unlike some folks who go into a character. I actually get to tap into myself in a deeper spot that's not socially acceptable. So watch me. Let
What?
me explain something to you. It is not socially acceptable for you to show up and be so, I know this sounds crazy, but it's not socially acceptable. It's okay, and some people do, but I've learned the hard way that if you socially, it's not acceptable to show up and be loving and caring, because people cannot accept that bushy love. And so, like, say, just try it. Walk into a coffee shop
Oh my
and
God,
start
you just
talking
brought
to
tears to
someone's
me.
baby. Just start talking to somebody's baby. Just like, hey, how are you? Or just asking someone just straight in their face, the Walgreen worker. So I was like, wow. And so going back to survival mode, right? The
Mhm.
conversation we are having. At one point in time, I was in deep survival mode. I had 3 teenage children within the same, they're all teenagers.
Wow.
And I needed healthcare, I needed a stable job and a place to stay. So I was working for the county, Multnomah County. And all that job, oh, it was just it was a nice little job, but it was just definitely about getting my check
Yeah.
and taking care of my babies and making sure they had health care. But the one part about my job I did like is I used to show up at events and I would table, and I was a community outreach worker, and I had a plethora of resources, super dope stuff, but nobody really wanted to talk to because I had to wear that badge and
Mm.
represent the county, and and there was just this, and of course, I probably had on something like this, what I had on, and there's just this preconceived notion that, oh, well, that's the county. I don't, like I could just be saying like the flyer could be free lunch, and people are out at an event and they're having fun. And out
Yeah.
of all the things, people would stop by and I'd say, hey, how are you? And I'd want to talk to their kids and they'd be like, why are you talking to that government? And there was just this weird feeling and people
Uh-huh.
would think like, what is your agenda? Like there's this whole list of
Oh.
things that people are wondering. Now, some people would be nice and accept it, but they didn't know who I was. I wasn't certainly Nikki Brown at that time. I was just a county worker, Miss
Uh-huh.
McKinney. I don't even know, like, yeah, my hair might have been pressed. Sometimes I wore a wig. Sometimes I
Yeah.
wore a head wrap. I just went through a whole thing where I was just trying to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And when I become the clown, I noticed there's something about that clown that people look and go, ha, that clown doesn't have a master's degree. That clown is not that clown doesn't have a religion. So I can talk to that clown because, when I'm the social worker, they're like, oh, that social
Uh-huh.
worker must be Muslim because I'd have my hair wrapped. Well, we can't talk to her. Maybe I don't want to put
Okay.
anybody out, but
Yeah,
or
yeah.
she has on a wig. So the natural
Yeah.
hair girls are going to come after me, even though I definitely wear a rock or fro. But, it's just like, you got about 2 seconds before somebody's going to judge you, and so I asked my boss, I said, I've got this clown character. Can I start tabling as this clown character? And it changed the world. And
What?
yeah, so I
What?
started, yeah. And so one of the things that I was supposed to be marketing was the free lunch program. It's just a simple thing. I didn't have to sign people up. And I would just want to give kids a sticker. When I was giving the kiddos the sticker, dressed as just a regular Black woman, the people were pulling their babies away from me. And just, some people were give you the little, even
Yeah.
Black people, Black, Asian, whatever, they, be kind of weird, like, oh, we don't
Yeah.
need this. But when I was the clown and I'd say, hey, can I give your kid a sticker? Yeah, sure. And, some people would even say, if the child didn't speak to me, they'd say, that clown is speaking to you. You're so cute. Or there was like, I don't know, it was just broke down all these barriers. And so I just feel
Wow.
like, so sorry to go too far, but I just wanted to say that I'm not putting my clown on to, yes, I do put it on to protect myself from the love that I'm trying to give freely, that I can't always do as the person because people won't
Yeah.
accept it because they're like, I've had people ask me, what church are you from? If I do something nice as a
Yeah.
human, right? Like, well, what
Wow.
organization are you from? If I had been at one point in time, I showed up at a youth program down at the Salvation Army. It was a basketball camp, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
what's going on in here?" And they're like, "Oh, we're just a church. We're doing basketball camp. Anybody's free to come." But there are these. The pastor pointed out that there was these girls that would show up every day, but they didn't want to do the basketball. And I was like, "Well, I kind of relate to that." And he's like, "Is there any way you could do anything with them?" And I was like, no problem. I can teach them to sew and cook and just hang out and listen to them or whatever we want to do. And I would do that, and everybody wanted to know why are you doing this?
So
Like,
are you
what?
am I understanding that what you're saying is that people when you're dressed as regular Nikki
Yes.
or maybe in your government outfit when you have that job that people were there's like this wall because people weren't really wanting to connect, but it sounds like inside you, inside your spirit, you want to be free and loving and really connect with people when it's appropriate for you.
Yeah.
And when you're in that clown outfit, like people are in all the settings where they normally would be like, oh, you must be from a church. You must be from there must be an agenda of why you're being so nice. But when
Mhm.
you're in the clown outfit, you're totally able to express that part of yourself in the outside world, that open part of yourself in the outside
Yeah.
world
No
respond.
barriers, no religion, no
Wow.
money, no classes. Everything is gone. Everything is gone. Just in that little bit of a moment. And I'm talking about like 2 seconds of meeting somebody. I don't have anybody ask me like, well, wait a minute. I mean, people are kind of strange and they'll ask
That's
you
amazing.
every now and then I get if
Yeah.
someone doesn't know me, but over the years, it made it easier, more and more acceptable now because of the clown. People are now accepting me as a human, and now I can
Ah,
show up and do some of the things that we talked about before, which is like now I can show up as invite kiddos to a community garden, and people like, oh, that's the clown lady. Oh yeah, she's good. We've seen her. And
Wow.
they're willing to trust me because they can watch me from afar, right?
Yes.
They can watch me from afar. And as a clown, I'm also trained that if I show up in a space and I see people being like they're scared or hesitant,
Yeah.
I know how to pull away from them. Versus when I would show up as Nikki, I was hurt and I didn't know how
Yeah.
I didn't know how to get past those barriers. But I also, when you show up to your workplace, you do represent that, or that, I want to say you represent that, but working for a government agency, I feel like they represented me, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
Okay.
Even if I could find the good in what I was doing, I don't like that. If someone had a negative experience with, I don't know, say the library, and I didn't even work with the library. I was working
Yeah.
for another department, or maybe they had a county experience at the, I don't
I,
know,
you
whatever,
know what?
whatever,
I know what you mean, because I feel that even like I'm grateful for people that I work for, and I'm grateful for, because like I'm a nanny most of the time and teacher, and
Uh-huh.
I'm so grateful for the people I work for, and I actually really like the people I work for, and it's a good relationship and everything. But when I'm out and about, I do there is a difference in how people interact with me, and I feel like they're seeing nanny first, and there's of course all these implications of like being a black nanny, and being a domestic, for some people they see nannies as not really more than a domestic worker, and
I can
so
relate to that.
right, so even though
Mhm.
I appreciate what it brings to my life and the relationship with the people I work for is good, I still feel a little caged by being defined by this aspect of my life rather than who I really am on the inside.
Exactly.
And as I'm talking to you, I'm like, God, I just want to go put on a clown outfit. I'm like, where can I make a clown outfit? But it's actually reminding me of, I've played many, I was a professional performer for a long time, and there are many costumes I put on. And if I had to walk home in a costume, or if we had costume parties and then went out to the bars when I was in college, like a very different experience how people approach
Definitely a
you.
different experience than when you show up
Freeing.
as yourself. And it
Yeah.
is. It's an uncanny, and especially as I approach. I think I'm in my 11th year of the clown, and I
Okay.
have that respect. I've done the work. It just makes it so much easier to pave the way as that clown. And
Yeah.
it's so weird, but it. But I'm proud of myself that I recognized early on that it wasn't me personally, is that people do have challenges and people are hurt. And
Yes.
I've been hurt before, so I get it. And
Yeah.
there are some organizations that maybe perhaps, and it's just our innate nature that I would say, nah, I don't want to, nah, and you hear like, oh, that's them. I don't want anything from you. And we
Yeah.
do that. Everybody does it as much as you want to be as loving or whatever, but you have like, okay, no, I'm not gonna, I
Yeah, there's some organizations have a different idea, of what it means to be loving toward each other or supportive or create
Mhm.
community. And I think especially right now when people, so many people are waking up to like activism and community creating, that
Yeah.
there's a lot of sort of either misguided or things that just don't align with like how you may see the future, or I may see the future. And it's awesome to have that discernment. And I'm willing to bet that your discernment now is way better than it was 10 years ago.
Oh, definitely. Definitely, because now I don't feel the need to have to attach myself to any particular
Mm.
organization. And
Oh, yes.
I definitely pull towards more like, I definitely love that there are organizations that take care of our community on a larger scale.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think I have always said this, and I always felt this in my spirit, that there's a need for and a niche for a micro activism. Like, you don't, like, you could just make a small little change, and a little ripple still a huge impact. Because like, say you have an organization, like Boys and Girls Club, that are serving the needs of so many children. I definitely can't do that, but I think on my own, I think earlier this week, I
Yeah.
just picked up a young, like a 11-year-old girl who started coming to my story time when she was like She was a little baby, and it's funny because she asked me how long did I know her, but I've just known her, my mom, and sometimes I just know that little small connection. I just took her for her birthday shopping. It was nothing that I posted. I'm just saying it here to just references, but I've always sent her a birthday gift, no matter where I lived. If I lived in California, if I
Wow.
lived here, I've always given her a birthday gift. And so this year I was so excited because I actually moved back, and I made arrangements to pick her up and just take her to Target and just connect with her. And and she was telling me about all these great organizations that she goes to, and she said, I really like this, and I was wondering if we could do this like at least once a month, not necessarily
Yeah.
go shopping, at this much, because it was a birthday gift.
Mhm.
But she said, I do like, and other things that I do is sometimes I pick her up, and sometimes she'll ask her cousins to come, and we go to I always pick like a local Black business for us to go, like a eatery. So last time we went to DB Desserts, I think,
Yeah.
and we all had a little milkshake over there. And it's just like 30 minutes. And even this shopping spree, it was just like 30 minutes. I'm not running a program. I don't want funding. I don't want to be like this big old mentorship. But I started to count after I dropped her off. I had this moment and I went, wow, I really do have a ton of kiddos that I actually do mentor, but
Yes.
and I make a difference. But
Yes.
I'm not this big organization, this big wheel.
You
And
know,
oh,
that's really important, Nikki, because one thing, I teach a lot of anti-racism from the spiritual perspective in different ways, courses, individuals, whatever. And one of the things, and I feel this too, one of the things that stops people in their tracks is like trying to hold the weight of the world on our shoulders, especially women, that we have to change everything in our communities. We have to learn and unlearn, unlearn and learn all the things. We have to show up at every protest. We have to do all the healings, all the meditation, like whatever the thing is that you're trying to do,
right.
and within yourself and then in your community. And that's really not sustainable
It's
for
not.
anybody.
Mm-mm.
And so I can't remember which mentor told me this, but they were like, just concentrate on what's in front of you and be consistent with it. And that, I feel like that's what you're talking about.
Oh, I
This
like that. I'm
yeah,
gonna
this
write that
micro,
down.
you said, I'm just going off what you
It
said,
does.
this micro
Stick
activism.
with it.
and
Mhm.
and like, I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that you're talking about realizing this over 10 years of time,
Oh
right?
yes, yeah. 10 years of building up trust.
Yes.
That the first group of children that I started showing up. So my thought process, I remember saying, of course, I wanted to be a clown. So when I came out as a clown, I was like, okay, what does a clown do? Okay, we go
Yeah.
to birthday parties, and I made my money doing that. And
Mhm.
in that time, that I could only do that on the weekend because during the week,
Yeah.
no one's having a birthday party. So like a Tuesday, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And I was like, there's not a story time for
Hmm.
Black and Brown folks that focuses on, like, where can you go? Like, I thought about at that time, my children had grown up and they're gone. And I said, man, when I used to go to, I mean, I absolutely love the library. I love these other, but the spaces were so white and so uncomfortable.
Mm.
First of all, if you were fortunate enough to be in a situation where you could stay at home as a Black or Brown Indigenous person, a mother, but the spaces were not welcoming.
Mm.
So the mommy and me type spaces. The
Yeah.
women were older, and there was just this hierarchy of like, oh, I'm staying home because my partner works, and I can afford to do this. And it was just this weird thing. And then the books were just that same old nursery rhymes that I knew back in college. I took the history of children's literacy, and I didn't know at the time that when I was taking it that I would use it later. So I also have done nanny work. I've worked in
Mhm.
early childhood. I've worked at facilities, child cares. I've also owned my own in-home child care and ran also homeschooled. So it's
Mhm.
like I knew that, but I wasn't sure how that was going to play in to know this history. But I knew that a lot of those nursery rhymes are just this wrong. Um, this wrong, and they don't encompass characters that look like you and
Of
I.
course. Of course.
So moving right along, I just knew that I was like, what do people do on a Tuesday? Where are the babies at on a Tuesday? What am I doing? I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I have time. I've worked all weekend. I don't want to work on Monday. That was just not it. Monday was my day off, but Tuesday, So I looked up and I said, somebody needs to do something about it. Somebody needs to read books. And so I decided to go to a local coffee shop that used to be historically a Black owned coffee shop, but it had been, that had retired, and it was now a new space for another coffee shop. And so I just went in there and said, hey, this used to be a bookstore. Did you know that? And they said no. So I gave them a little history lesson, and I said, I think that you guys are getting protests that Black and brown folks don't want to come in here because they feel like you ran the other stuff, even if it wasn't true. And so I said, let me come in here and read. Let me invite the community in here. So I did,
Yeah.
and I started off with just me and my granddaughter, a couple of folks, and yeah, that was about 11
You're a
years
grandma. I didn't know that.
ago.
This is
Yes,
grandma energy. Oh,
yes.
I'm
So
so happy.
me and my grandbaby, who's like, she'll be 10 this year. And so her and I would be down there. She was like 1 or 2. So if you look really closely in some of the pictures of me performing, you'll see this little curly head, lighter version of me sitting in the crowd. And but my friends who were at home, and most of my friends were young women who had babies, and I was like, you meet me at the coffee shop. Just meet me at the coffee shop. I love coffee. I was like, meet me at the coffee shop. I'm gonna read to our babies. But they're like, we're not doing anything on Tuesday. And
Yeah.
so it just grew and grew. And I realized that I was gonna just show up with any book, and then I just didn't feel authentic. So I started
Mhm.
to show up with books, really start to really dig in. And I had a collection of Black books because my granddaughter lived on and off with me, and she had. So between that, and at that time, I wasn't necessarily a literacy clown. That was just
Mhm.
something that I thought that needed to be done. And then eventually added music to it. And then before I knew it, um, early childhood centers started to contact me, and they would take field trips to my story time.
That's beautiful. I mean, what I'm hearing is that you're having this experience of putting on a costume. And we talked about the artistry of the costume, but putting on this costume that allows you to be who you are and connect with people in a deep way that they're not used to. It takes the wall away. And then looking around in your community and seeing what would work first for, like, this situation with my, with my grandbaby here. You got
Right.
kids around, your own kids, and what does this community need? What would be fun? What Here's an opening, and it's like, this is just such a, um to me, it just sounds like this healing journey. I mean, like, and by healing I mean from the structures around us that keep us separate, that keep us, in a uniform that's not really us. And it's like, I love the way you're so clearly explaining this, because you're showing a story that's accessible to all of us. This is accessible to all of us, to be able to be in a process of figuring out who we really are, how do we create ourselves and who we really are, and then also connect with our community in a way. And I want to say, like, you're talking about a long period of time. I think one of the things that trips us up is we live in this world of like instant gratification. And so we want to see, yeah, we want to see our efforts. Like, we want to see that we're helping that kid. It's not just about like clicking and seeing the Amazon package show up. It's also like, we want a better new world, but we have this program that's like, we want to see our efforts working now.
Oh, you know what? I am so happy, and I'm gonna like really open up here.
Please do.
That I really, yeah, I can feel really safe and comfortable, and I don't usually share it because people. This is weird thing when you start talking about money, right?
Mhm.
People, the thing about my character, because she is obviously a human. Um, I'm in the business of people, so
Uh-huh.
folks don't want to know that I make money at my craft. It's just a weird thing. I mean, it's a fine line between being an artist and then again talking about that love. People want to know that I actually love the community, and I'm constantly being tested. Do you love your community? And like you said, there's this whole list of things that Black women, whether people are expecting us, or we put that pressure on ourselves, like I got to show up at this protest, I got to show this because I got to show that I love them. And I remember saying, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I don't show up at the protest, but what I can do is during the
Mm.
times that there's like protests, and it was so weird, the world is literally crumbling around me, and I felt really bad because I thought, oh man, I'm over here in this clown suit. But I said, no, 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 no.
Uh-huh.
Babies still deserve joy, just like I did in 1978 when I showed up to kindergarten. And I know for a fact the world was not on point in 78, right? I want, I was 5 years old and there was a Black woman there, Mrs. Woods, in St. John's, who showed up and made my life magical. And I remember that I got a card for my birthday, for my sixth birthday, and she was like, no, I think I turned 5. It's so weird, like you can go to school back then. But I remember, anyways, a birthday card from her, and just and now that I'm an adult, thinking about, first of all, I remember that I had my first teacher was Black.
Yeah.
In white Portland. Number two, that she took time out, and I remember her coming to my house, and I think about the other people in my community, and I think about like the research that I've done about what the world looked like for 73, thinking about how my how the authorities came to my home to investigate, that they felt like my mom at the time may have committed some type of welfare fraud by having a
Oh,
job,
wow.
food stamps. And that wasn't, you could do that now, but back then, or like having my stepdad live there. And of course, that's not necessarily my story, but what I'm seeing is I was this little person, but what made life still magical for me, and my parents provided that, is my dad still showed up to show me how to sew. My mom ordered me books. I had a library card, and I had that Black teacher. So what I did was, when I did the research, I was like,
Mhm.
even though I see and I'm very aware of the things that are going on here in Portland and worldwide, that's not my fight. I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm over here making sure that I'm preserving the childhood of now, of now, of not to
Yes.
say that they're, but don't get it twisted, because but my story time is not about masking that stuff's not going on, because we, in my story times, we're talking about being different. I show up with books
Yes.
written by Colin Kaepernick. We're talking about skin color. We're
Yeah.
actually doing self-portraits. We're talking about safe boundaries. And we're
Yes.
also debunking the thought that Black women need to be a certain kind of way, because me just innately showing up like how Mrs. Woods showed up for me, that I was like, I hadn't seen an educated Black woman. My mom's like dropped
Oh,
out of school.
yes. I didn't have, my parents did their very best to get books, and I grew up overseas, so it was a little harder, but books that had just even token Black characters in them. Like I remember getting tapes sent from the United States of cartoons. My grandmother taped the cartoon because we didn't have satellite or whatever where I lived overseas, and they would send the tapes, and there would be these commercials. First of all, there's almost no Black characters in the shows, but there'd be these commercials. And I remember as a little kid, because I grew up in an international community where everybody's mixed, right? So like, I thought it was so weird to get these commercials from the United States, and like the whole commercial was all white.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And then there'd be like lawyers on TV. And now this is from New Orleans, so there's a little bit more color, but I was just like, what is this world where, and so that's just, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you're sharing this, and how important this, I hope people listen. I hope listeners that you can hear how simple these concepts really are, but the profundity of how they can impact. Nikki's sharing that with us right now, how that impacted her, how this is impacting kids over the years. This is, I believe what you're talking about is, so how I relate to what you're talking about is, in building the new world, yes, there are going to be fights in the streets, and there's going to be the protest, and there's going to be people in the government fighting, and at different resource community levels, social community levels. And also something you said, babies deserve joy. And all of these things are necessary and essential in different ways. And there can be 1,000 arguments in academic papers and whole thousands of communities and followers saying like what you're doing is insignificant. But I've been there where people have said the spiritual work around race and our identity and the healing is not as important as getting in the streets and fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think so. I'm like, I'm not going to say that what you're doing is wrong. I think what you're doing in the streets, even though I would never do it, is keeping the focus on these issues that need to, yes, please, if that's what it takes in the system, go and do that. But there's also the other healing stuff, the joy, the how do we come together, especially the healing with these little kids so that we can stop fighting with each other, because we know that this system really loves for Black people to fight each other.
Or one of the things, the reason why I started making, being like overly on social media is I started a platform to pump out these joyful images of Black children. Because I was just like, okay, I do have, girlfriends who they work in a system where maybe they go to DC and they argue for early childhood rights and whatnot. And maybe they employ the school teachers. But sometimes I have to be the reminder of like who you're fighting for. And so that's why I try to put those pictures up, even though, we could talk about the scary monster political person who cut this funding. And yeah, that's a good conversation over a glass of wine. But, we still need both, we need the art, we need the joy. And so me, I say, I find myself as I am the guardian. I'm the guardian of that peace for the children. And so that's my fight, that's beautiful. Fight. I'm creating a safe space for those. So I remember, working on this community garden is that although the community garden definitely is for everybody, white, BIPOC, everybody's welcome. Yeah. However, I think that by having, my reputation to precede itself, that it magically, I didn't think that this was going to happen. And I don't know how to garden. I don't know the first thing about organizing a community garden. But what I do know is that I am the peacemaker and the safe space maker and the guardian of a place where people know if they see my name signed off on it, that it is child friendly, Black child friendly. Or if it's other children, they know that this is a space where they're going to come and respect.
Yes.
Others will be there versus where you have the dominant culture where I remember in the 90s showing up with my baby, trying to show up and be in spaces that were shocked.
Minefields.
What are you doing here? Like, how do you know about this? And we're gonna do, Wheels on the Bus or whatever. But I just and I've been noticing that whether it's me teaching a cooking class or gardening, so I'm starting to figure out and be okay in those spaces out as I approach 50 years of life on this planet. And I realized that yeah, as much as I love being the clown, there's these other things that I like doing, but the clown really does open it up for some of the advocacy. But however, one of the things that kind of bothered me that I wasn't perfect. So we can all clap, and I love the accolades that I've made and the respect. But one of the things that really hurt my heart was that once I was done and I took the makeup off and I was here in my home, or not in this home, but alone by myself, is that I realized that I never could see it is a slow progress, right? And I definitely am severely underpaid. I think in the
of course.
I think I filed taxes twice on the income because I was it's not an income. It's not a sustainable type thing. It's not about the money. It was about that. If I get paid, that's great. And I do it well, that people love to pay me, but that wasn't the point. But one of the things that I hated was that I would literally, like, those first group of babies, they're like approaching middle school, or they are in middle school, and they're kind of moved on, and they kind of come back and do some things with me, but I couldn't really see it through, right? And so that's when I started to dig a little deeper about that. Yeah, I could write a check, and a good portion of my income does go towards charitable things, and I recycle my dollars into Black owned businesses, women and men, and other folks too. But I had to dig a little deeper, and especially getting married, and my husband and I, we we said, and then when he came on, I told him how I was, and he said, okay, well, this is what we could do. We could take care of your granddaughter, which is now our granddaughter, and we now have another granddaughter and another granddaughter on our way. And we, we've homeschooled her. We send money and activities and things, and we support my adult children. But it's just a weird thing. So then we moved to say, okay, well, we don't celebrate Christmas, but we do honor that there's a child out there that still believes in that. So we'd go to the mall and see the tree and pick that card off and say, okay, we picked two teams.
Oh, yeah.
College. We were living in a college town. So
Yeah.
we a couple of college students. So we do like five. So two or three college students, two or three teens, and then like one little guy. Because everybody does a baby. Like all the babies would go.
Yeah.
All the little kids. And it was funny because the older children would be asking for like a bed in a bag. College students were asking for hygiene products. And I was like, okay. So I would go, spend a couple $100, drop the stuff off, and then we'd be like, we are so great people. And it just felt so, like we didn't meet them. You don't meet them. You don't know.
Yeah.
Like something about this just does not feel right. It seems too sterile, and there's no accountability. So we took we about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, my husband and I decided to really hold ourselves a little bit, not a little bit, a whole lot of accountable, and register as licensed foster parents.
Wow. Well, I was going to ask, is there something in this last year that was a big change in yourself that you wanted to share? And I've been watching this year. Please tell us, because I've watched some of the frustration. I've had some people go through this in my life, go through this process. And it is like just watching your posts, I mean, most your posts are mostly joyful, but just some of the things that you're sharing about like going through the process and like the paperwork. I mean, you're dedicated.
Well, it was funny because there's a couple different ways that you can engage, right? And once I started going through the licensing, it happened right as we were going into the pandemic. So I didn't know. I was told that it would take a long time. And so it was taking a long time. Like you do this huge paperwork, and there's this background FBI and state and all this different things and questionnaires. And so then the world closed down. So we started the process like in October. And I don't know, these folks were kind of like, they do this thing and there's this back and forth of like asking you questions and stuff like that. So when the world shut down, Zoom was still kind of wonky. So they're supposed to come to your house and do these interviews. And so it just took a long, long time for us to even go through the process to be approved. So it took like 1 year or just shy of a year. And so at that point I was like, man, just forget it. Like I didn't even want to do it anymore. We were in the pandemic, and I was like, but the pandemic actually made me think, well, wait a minute. What happens if you're a Black child or, an indigenous, Spanish speaking child, and it's the pandemic. And so it decreased the amount of people that people did not want to do this work. They already didn't want to be foster parents. There's already a shortage of Black and brown foster parents, but then now it's a pandemic.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even think about that.
Of a revolving door of people coming and going.
Yeah.
Starting a process where you're in isolation. So there's a couple times I wanted to throw in the towels, like, no, this is taking too long. It's just not worth it. Maybe this is not in the cards. And I just was asking the universe, like, why am I doing this? What is the point? And I just thought I need to get a deeper understanding of how, I don't know. I just wanted, I felt like I needed to just know, even if I didn't go through it, I wanted to know so I could just advocate, because I had taken care of my granddaughter, which is an informal foster care. I hate to use those together because I don't want to imply, because they're such a nasty, but it's very common with, Black and brown folks that we just take care of, whether you're auntie or cousin, to stay for a summer, like that's kinship care, right?
Yeah.
to work, your granny takes care of you. And that's the foster care system that we've always had, an aunt or a community person, and you stay with that church lady.
Yeah.
I had a child. I mean, I had a sister. I'm the oldest of my mom, but
Yeah.
I had a sister that I don't even talk to now. But this woman that's this child that stayed with us, and it was
Yeah,
normal.
my deal was that person in New Orleans, in Hanville. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just like, and my parents just agreed to keep her. There was no paperwork, and so going through that process with my granddaughter, staying and helping my daughter out, it made me realize, my husband and I, that we probably should commit to other. What if there are young people, 30, 20s, that have
Mhm.
children, that their children don't have an aunt, uncle, grandparent, a mother or father to informally. And
Okay.
that's how you have to get into the system. So my agreement with my daughter was, hey, if you ever think you don't have it, I don't care what I got going on. I don't care if that baby has to be on every float or
Yeah.
time. Just bring me my grandbaby. I don't care what I got going on. And I really, really meant that. And I have lived that.
Yeah.
And those folks who know that part of my story. So I realized, so it made me have a different heart to say,
Yeah.
everybody doesn't have it. Everybody doesn't have it like that. So when our husband and I didn't give up. So we did get so then by the time we got processed, we got matched with a young man, and he was like 8 years old. And it was just a really hard process because
Yeah.
we were told that this child was, yeah, he's just ready to be adopted. And
Right.
yeah, he's just ready to be adopted, and you can just take him, and he doesn't have any family, and just go for it. And so I was just
Wow.
all over the top, just rainbows, like, okay, well, we're perfect. Come on in. Here's your room. Let's take you here. Let's do this, da, da, da. And I hadn't thought about, like, wait a minute, this person that I was not equipped to do, that's different from when you show up as the clown and you have these small interactions with people,
Yes. Yes.
not really in their lives, but you're
Yeah.
in their lives. I did learn. So I don't, want the takeaway from this conversation is that, yeah, I make mistakes too. And I learned. And I did put myself in a situation where I had to learn the hard way. But this child was grieving. They had lost their mother.
Yeah.
And um, the hardship of being able to accept another mother figure. Um,
Ooh.
and what that meant. And but I learned a lot about how we treat our children, how
Mhm.
mental health is not accessible, where everybody's like, oh, the foster parents, they get all this money and they have us medical, but nothing is accessible. There's not enough. You can't do this. And so I learned a lot of rules, and it made me see life full circle, because there's these doors that you don't understand. Like, you can meet different people. I thought about it, I was like, in my lifetime, I've met people who grew up in foster care. I know people who do foster care, but I
Yeah.
don't think I really understood until I became a foster parent how how deep it really is, and trying to get him access um to where he needed to be, mental health care, and also realizing that I was not a perfect match to be his parent, and he made it very
Yeah.
clear. And yeah, and
I have a question about your family. Did you, was there any of this type of kinship care, goodwill towards children? Like, did you get any kind of experience of this as a kid? Like, did your parents take people in, or whoever you grew up with?
absolutely. And also, I was kind of touching on in the beginning, just like my parents took in this young woman, or child at the time, and it was a friend of theirs. And I remember calling her aunt, the parent, the adult who needed to go away and go off to the military. I don't really know the story. It just wasn't really privy to that.
Mhm.
But my mom took them in, and then I remember my mom going about to, like, my cousins and really checking in on them and making sure that they had things that they need, and other people in the community. And sometimes it left me a little bitter, because I would see my mom doing a lot for other people,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily in the manner that I felt like she could do for me. I didn't go without. I definitely grew up in a privileged space, but there was this kind that she did, but it was not uncommon to have someone come stay, whether it was a cousin, but more so that kinship care of this person who, like, I just remember, like, all these years, sometimes she would leave and go live with her mom, and I couldn't put my finger on what that was, but
Hmm.
just saying that we were sisters. She was like 4 years older than me. I remember her being responsible for me to a certain extent, and I remember her having her own family and how she stayed connected, and thinking about, like, what how she idolizes my mom versus how my relationship is with my mom, um my own personal relationship, and how she was able and reuniting with her family and what that looked like. So it also, I knew there was something there, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But now, me being in the position, I think that I love that she was able to reunite with her parents. And when I watched her on social media, and even talking to her, because she was loved so well by my parents and
Mhm.
was encouraged to, I guess her mom, this is the weird part. When her mom got out of the military, she didn't really necessarily want to go live with her, but her mom got out and took care of her nieces and nephews.
Oh, wow.
It's really weird, like a whole bunch of them. And so I just kind of watched how these families took care of each other. But at the end, they were able to get back together, and I just the reunification of that, and
Yes.
that that my mom being able to be okay with that, and but then also still feeling like she still needs to be acknowledged for the work that she did, and how
Mhm.
my I I call her my god sister, how she feels like she owes my parents her life, and how she just honors them in a way that she doesn't see the same character flaws that I see. But that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation.
I mean, that's a really that's actually something that exists quite powerfully in Black communities. Like, my grandmother died last October, and it was interesting to hear from one of her charges. She worked domestically in a house as a nanny and house helper for many years. And the way that now grown man, who's almost the same age as one as maybe a little younger than my mom, right? Um, the way he talks about my grandmother is kind of different than the way my mom and her sisters talk about my grandmother, who's their mom. And
Right.
and so I feel like that's a very common thing when you have the setting in which you are the caregiver or the parent. It really changes things, and like we said, kids see everything.
Hmm.
um and so I sometimes I long for creating a system like, do you know Sabun Fusome?
Say it again.
Sabun Fusome.
Oh no.
Okay, so she has a couple really great books, and I'm gonna look it up really quick, but I'm pretty sure it's called the Women's Wisdom from the Heart of Africa. And she talks about growing up. She's in Burkina Faso. She was in Burkina Faso, and she talks about growing up in a, a tribal setting in which you're taken care of by everyone. And she says that she didn't know who her mom was until she was 6, because just everybody just takes care of everybody's kids. You just it's not as significant. And I wonder sometimes, are we making in our society, are we starting to make a transition, or would it be helpful to us to start making this transition back into community spaces where children can be taken care of by many people safely, and without it being a toll on any person or any other child?
Exactly. And I think that's what I was touching on, is like, not only do I go, like the little girl that I was saying, I pick up and I kind of look out because she's like the only girl in this huge family of boys.
Mhm.
But then somehow I've made a connection with her youngest brother.
Mhm.
Not so many of the, but I actually think about like how I show up for all of them in a different kind of way. Like the youngest brother, I was actually his doula.
Mhm.
And nothing for me to
You're a
call him.
doula too.
And so, but I use it, it's so weird, like just all these different things. But I think that I show up and do these things so that I can kind of fully understand why my mom was in, I don't want to say inadequate, but why she couldn't be everything to me, and that pressure that I put on her, and the pressure that society puts on a mother, particularly a
Mhm.
no, as a white, say like a white mother, right?
Mhm.
It would be nothing for her to say, "Oh, I have a nanny to have this," and again, nothing wrong with it. But I'm just saying, like, I remember sharing with someone that I thought about hiring. I went through this process of, I don't need to get too far, but I was sharing with another Black woman that I was doing interview. Well, first of all, I hired a Black nanny consultant who she consults nannies on how to be a professional nanny
Mhm.
and then she consults with family on how to hire a nanny. And
Mm.
I remember
It's beautiful.
that folks that this particular Black woman was very upset with me and kind of judged me and said that I wasn't using my time right and that
Mm.
like she somehow implied that I should be resting when the children are at school and that
What?
yeah, like, oh, and I said resting when they're at school. Like, if I wasn't doing this right now, I would probably be doing, doing loads of laundry, cleaning
Yes.
up. Or I've peeked over at my phone and saw a couple two things that folks are reminding me that they need from me. I
Yes.
support a woman that's transitioning out of prison today. Like I was just like, you're making it seem like that I'm just not really tired. Like my tiredness can just be relieved. I'm not talking. I don't take naps, but my tiredness cannot be relieved because I need to take a 15-minute nap while they're at their elementary school.
Yeah,
That's not what.
there's an emotional toll. There's so many things for you to do. There's resources. There's other things that you take care of. You live in the United States of America.
Right. And I was saying that I said, well, during the week when they're at school, my husband's at work. So I'm saying, no, I needed a nanny so they can go on a date night. I can't just leave them.
Yeah.
Um, and just to, I'm sure, like you said,
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah.
nanny, why people hire a nanny. But it's this concept that number one, I don't have the community. So
Mhm.
it's expected that I would do everything.
Yeah. You are
Just
the community.
yeah,
You are 10 people.
that was like in that I just thought about like, oh yeah, that youngest one that I was a doula, that it's nothing for me to call the mom and say, oh, I have a coat for him, or I'm picking him up to take him with my boys to get a coat. And my husband goes along with it. And most people would think that was so odd that they'd be like, well, isn't that the mom's? I had a friend who gave me the feedback, like, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm out with the boys. And she heard me say a fourth name. I have three boys. And then I said a fourth name. And they were like, wait a minute, who is that? And I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so's son. He's along with the ride. He's about the same age. And she said that he needed a coat. And okay, what's one more? What's one more?
Yeah. Yeah.
One more. Like, oh my gosh, well, that's his mom. Where's his parents? And I said, I am his parent. Like, I watched this guy be born. Like, I'm his, like, if something happens to him, like, and so I personally believe that I like the system that you were saying that
Mm.
we used to be in community in the Africans, and that's why we do say auntie. But but the only way for us to get back to that is there has to be folks like myself who should
Mm.
and be that example. You can't just sit around and be like, oh, well, that's how it used to be, and
Yeah.
this and
It
that.
has to be created, it has to be experienced.
Exactly. And I show up and I don't always post them online because people still, again, about that love that I have, that people, because if I say, oh, if I had to did a picture of me and this girl having this time, number one, can be on my phone because that would just break that tie that we're having.
Mhm.
But the masses of people looking at that would look at like, well, the first thing they're asked is, why are you doing that? Well, is that your niece? How is that person connected to you? And I just really
Oh,
hate
back to the agenda.
exactly.
Why can't you just be someone who is taking care of the well-being of this child? And at the same time, I understand, like, at the same time, I also understand, like, we're at an all-time high of non-trusting,
Oh, we
and
are.
there's a reason that you might want to talk to somebody like about a child. But if you can feel and see that a person is there just taking care of the well-being of a child, and the child looks healthy and happy, like, I think it'd be very odd for my mind to jump to, like, I need to know the story. It's just,
Please
it's,
hear the story of why do you have that? And of course I don't just show, like, I don't do that for everybody because I
yeah.
don't I built up trust and I've been to their house and I know the parents and I'm free to do that. But I realized that even to do that, I believe that people don't trust enough to even have those kind of relationships to think that
Mm.
I don't do it. I didn't do it because I thought, oh yeah, I have to or whatever. But um, I also want to bring about that, this month in April, it's Child Abuse Awareness Month. And one of the
Mm.
things that we do to reduce child abuse um, is that it is helping making ourselves available to children, in a sense to parents. One of the things that I have done in the community is I would let folks know, hey, no questions asked. No, this is before I had my own children.
Mhm.
I'm a foster parent, but just showing up and just letting somebody know that, hey, no strings attached. But if you ever need a babysitter, or hey, I'm calling, would it be helpful for me? I know about this camp, and just genuinely
Wow.
relationship with folks. And I've always done that, or leaving chalk outside in the neighborhood when I didn't have children in my house and I lived and I knew that there were stuff, or sitting different toys and stuff outside, but just being friendly. I remember one time I was at a coffee shop and a boy, I was dressed as a clown. I'd finished my show and all the children were gone. And the boy was supposed to be waiting in the car to go into the hair store that was connected to this coffee shop. So there's the
Yeah.
hair, the common like Nikkei. And he got out of the car and he came in and he was like, hey, Nikki. And he was telling me all about, I knew that I knew him, but I didn't remember his name. He was like closer to middle school. And so he was talking, telling me all about how his life had, was different now that he's a big boy and he doesn't come to my story times and hasn't seen me. And he's telling me about football, telling me about school. And then he stops and he goes, I'm really hungry. And I said, oh, and he's like, yeah, I was supposed to be at school today, but I got into some trouble, and that's why I'm with my mom, and she's in the. I said, where is she? And she's like, oh, she's in the hair store, and
Mm.
you better get in the store, but get back in the car. But hey, I had a tab that was my fee, at this coffee shop that I could get whatever I wanted. I said, hey, can you give him, my donut or coffee cake or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, better yet, I can that and they have an apple. And that young man, and I realized at the moment it was nothing. And he went on and he's like, thanks, Nikki. And he
Yeah.
went on business. And I thought, are we making ourselves, available to not only the parents, but the children to say what their needs are and know that they could, that you get what I mean? That
Yeah.
he was hungry. And it wasn't like, now I told that same story to another friend. And they're like, oh, he was just trying to scam you out of a tasty, this and just
Yeah, but maybe his need was he just wanted to connect too. Even if he was trying to scam, like,
don't care. Because
like,
because I think me personally, whether he was hungry or not, I think he probably, he was talking to me and he had been there for a while. And it was like, normally when you come into a coffee shop, you come in, you buy your stuff and you leave. And I was thinking maybe that was that bridge or the awkwardness of like, wait a minute, okay, what is the point of me being in here? And so it's just easy
yeah,
to get, to say, oh, I'm hungry or whatever, and so, and of
yeah,
I obliged and gave him something. But I was just like, that's how I want to show up. But because I don't remember his name, I don't know what happened to him. He shared with me as a very small few time. It's not like I have quantitative work where I know like the impact that I've
yeah.
made in being in this community. I know that it's impactful, but these three youth that I've accepted into my home, I really love
As a
how,
foster parent?
yeah, as a foster
Okay.
parent, I've accepted a sibling group of three boys.
Mhm.
And, um, I love watching that now I can be there to see them out and
Mhm. Mhm.
be there from, and to see the growth and what would happen if you really are just more than just showing up at one event for this person. And
Yes.
that's where I was going with that. My husband and I said that we need to be a little bit hold ourselves. We're not saying that other people, but we also noticed that there wasn't a lot of representation, and we were trying to figure out why. Why
Yeah.
is there a lot of representation? Number one, I know that if you're a content creator, that stuff is hard. So
Oh my God. Makes
to,
me want to cry.
so I realized that probably most foster parents don't create content and be a foster.
No.
And what I'm trying to achieve, even though it might like when I get my views and I'm like, oh dang, 40 views on that. And I'm like, I put in a lot of work trying to explain. how it, what to do. But with the DMs that I get when I get these people who say to me, "Hey, I'm trans, and I just wanted to know,
Mhm.
can can I be a foster parent?" And I'm able to have that conversation with them. Or I
Yeah.
live in an old dusty farm with my partner. Can
Oh,
I?
you're gathering up all the people who want to do it. They're
Yes,
finding you.
yes, because they say, well, if a black woman could get on here on the social media, they don't feel comfortable right on front. And so I was like, I didn't see it coming. And they were like, lady is a clown, like certainly she's got these rainbows. She certainly is a safe person to say
That's
outside,
beautiful, Nikki.
and by all means, I definitely, and black and brown folks have definitely come out, but I love that I can be in that space that anybody, sexuality, gender, different walks of life, religion, there's, atheists have, hit me up, hey, and I just love that they're saying, hey, I'm going to be a foster parent at first, but you show an insight in it that I can't ask. I don't feel comfortable or safe to ask in mainstream um,
That's so cool.
case management or wherever you go to get your information.
Wow.
And
You're like such a great role model, Nikki. I hope listeners, even if you're not interested in foster care, like go and watch, like follow Nikki's you're posting on Facebook and Instagram, or just Instagram right now, or Facebook right now?
Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. Yeah.
Instagram is a little easier to get to the content, which is Black and Brown foster parents.
Okay. Well, I'll post all of that in the show notes too, so that people can see it. But really, it's really inspiring, and I'm a caregiver myself, and so I not a foster caregiver, but child caregiver. And there's been things that you posted, I'm like, oh, okay, and I'm like, I can do that, And so I'm so inspired by this walk, and that you're walking, and it's just I feel like this is the wisdom that helps us change this world into what we really want to be. And so I'm so grateful for you sharing. And I just have a couple more questions for you, if that's okay, Nikki.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, okay, so if the Nikki Brown of 20 years ago walked into your dwelling and wanted to talk to you, what would you tell her?
Wow. Well, number one, I would say, number one, girl, leave your hair alone. You're fine. You're fine. It's funny. Let's see, 20 years ago was actually when let's see, yeah, 20 years ago was when I had actually had one of my first clown costumes. I omit that because it's just too hard and there's all these stop, fails. But
Mhm.
I actually had I think what's more, it's like 18, 19 years old.
Mhm, mhm.
So on 20 years ago, I can't really put my finger on about 20, but I do
Okay.
remember that the first sighting of the clown, I showed up at a birthday party 19 years ago at a first birthday.
What
And
would you say to her? I'm so excited to find out.
girl, that husband that you like, it's okay. Keep exploring, do your research, and go ahead and just go for it. I would tell her but if you don't do it now, everything that you're going to learn from now will help you become that clown character that you really want to be. Because that's where that started. I would just definitely say that it's okay if you don't do it right now, and that this is definitely practice. Because first I was like, oh, I'm just gonna scrub it, and then I was like, no, that's not really true because I did so much work in between working
Mhm.
childhood director, after school programming, and a lot of all that plays into right now. Like
Yeah.
that, and the businesses that I started and stopped then, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
a massage therapist, owning a restaurant, being a nanny, blah blah blah. And I was like, man, I was just like a serial entrepreneur. It's okay. You're gonna use all of that, but
Yeah.
meanwhile, I had that one little clown costume together. So just wait, just save up all of that stuff that you had, girl. That's what
Yeah.
Nikki.
What great encouragement. I love that. And I think I think I've been getting really into time travel lately because a guest on this podcast and I've been talking a lot about like really terrible things going on in this world and how do we stop something, that is like so big, and how do you do it? And I've really been getting into like time travel and what that means for human beings right now. How can we time travel? And I think, what you're saying about talking to Nikki 20 years ago, I feel like I would say the same thing to myself, but also I think this is something that I can imagine now. Like myself from 20 years in the future would probably come back and tell me that same thing too. Keep going with what this is. It's, this be in your passion and don't go away. Cause you're talking about going back to a time where you were sort of dabbling and experiencing what you're still passionate about right now. It was very real.
Uh-huh.
You thought about real stuff for yourself.
Is it possible? Because when you said that, I was like, mostly in the past when I was younger, people would ask me that, and I would say I'm so disconnected from that person. But my true answer is that I actually talk to that person quite a bit now as I slide into 50. My sister and we do a lot of shadow work, and I find that I actually connect with her because she left me a lot of clues.
Yeah.
Is that I thought to myself, I was connecting them as failures, right? Because when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this suit that I had when I was in Georgia.
Yeah.
Went to the shop and I found this suit and I was like, oh, this would make a good clown suit. I had started being the clown 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So at that time, 2 years prior to that. So actually doing that would make it 20 because that
Yeah.
2 years prior to just even that, I was like, or after 2 years after the first time I was the clown, I was in Georgia because I had left Oregon, fleeing domestic violence, and I just
Bless.
yeah, and the healing and thinking about what stopped me from that, and thinking about that tumultuous, traumatic relationships and things, and not and about it. But I would never wish that on me. But I think about the strength and the survival and the things that I picked up. So even when I was down, being in a vintage shop in Georgia, away from my past, doing weekly domestic violence classes, support groups. And I would stop by this vintage shop and I picked out this suit and it had like these ruffles. And I don't know where that suit is. And I remember having it. And then there was this other little suit that I got and I brought it back and I've worn it before to collect my awards. Sometimes I've won like best, I don't know, best clown or something like that. And I was just thinking about like, how those moments when I thought that this would be right time to be a clown and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And when I think back of that question, how those suits and those little things, those wigs or those little treats, they're actually here in my future, if that makes sense.
Yes.
He had failed me. And I was like, well, I always say, dang, I wish I was the clown back then. And then I was like, no, there's things that I use now that I take for granted. And I think my mind works kind of weird. Like I'll be like, oh, I've had this for a little while. And I think that, and it's like, girl, no, that's from 2003. That's a long time ago. Like that's not like, just right. Like that's 20 years, like 20 something years ago.
Yeah.
And that's like 2-3 years ago. So I'm like, no, I brooch that I have, that's a clown thing. And I think, oh, I remember when she got that, she didn't know what to do with it and how I hid it because I thought it was embarrassing. It was this gold clown brooch. I think it might even be a male clown. It's more of a traditional clown, which I don't really fake. But I know now how I wear it with honor. Okay.
Yes.
So my future me from the past me told me to hold on to that. She's not worried. I'm embarrassed about it now.
Yeah.
I have it on my suit and I show up on the red carpet with that on with my husband that I have now that I didn't see that I would have with the kids. And I think about how I show up with just a little piece. So that's what I would say.
Oh, so you are a time traveler.
Yes, I am. So that's why I was like, I didn't have it. I was like, I'm going to have to study some time travel. But I believe, but I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go into that. But I do talk, and I think that she gives me a lot of clues. It's not, what I'm saying is it's not me telling her, she was telling me now is what I'm saying. Everybody.
Oh my gosh, we're about to get into some really nerdy time travel paradoxes right now. We'll save it for another episode.
No, let me stop. My time with you here.
Okay, so I have one more question for you, Nikki Brown. What is your blessing for this world?
Wow, my blessing for this world, again, is that I'm just gonna always make space for Black and brown babies to have a magical space. So just keep keeping that magic and making it obtainable for every child. And so that's my blessing, is that I'm gonna give my innate belief in magic and joy for Black children, something that I didn't always have. Um, I had it, but it wasn't protected.
Mm-hmm.
So I, in return, instead of coming out as an angry adult and crying about what I didn't get as a childhood or how that could play out, I decided to bless the world with that they could have, that I would protect that. So whatever that looks like. So if I show up and I know that there needs that, I'll look and I'll say, my gift is I can look at an event that's being thrown and I will email the event coordinator to say, I noticed your layout and it's not a safe place to have the children over there back by that area. So just even and it's not just always the magic, right? To say, oh, don't come up and smile or read a book, but it's about that I will volunteer my time on a board of different events that have kids spaces. So I do show up in those spaces, and those are my gifts to say that I specialize in environments that's what makes it magical, right? That it's safe, they can play and they can learn, and they can be. So that's how I want to leave that. And that's to see that, because without the safety, you can't have all the other stuff. And some people, we're gonna put some candy back there, we're gonna put some snow cones, but it's like, one time I showed up at an event and they had it planned out that they would have it in the street, and they're like, but the street is blocked off. I'm like, yeah, but cars can still come in there. And I said, no, you need to put it up into the event. And they were like, oh, we didn't see that. And I'm like, and that tree is blocking that. So again, you have all the great components, or telling people you have too much. Take that jump house up out of there.
I love that you're talking about, like, I know you know this about yourself, but I just want to big ups it. And that is, you really are a guardian of the space that children are in as well.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you for minimizing what I'm trying to say. Is that I'm like, Black children, they are adults, fied or whatever. So, fied. So they're like, people think they're like mini adults. Oh, they can take care of themselves. They're at an event. They need to just look for me. And I'm like, no, you need to create space that's accessible, intentional, and it's going in. And I also believe in avoiding discipline. So I need the space to be designed in a space that they can be magical, but their parents won't have to discipline them over there unnecessarily, because I've already thought about, like, oh, well, let's not leave these sticks out so the boys will start to play sword fighting.
Right.
So so they can so you can sword fight over there when they walk into the space.
I mean, thank you for being this role model and putting this intentionality in this really what sounds like a healing journey for you, but also your community, and really creating moments in your life, consistent moments in your life where you can be free to be who you are. Because that's really important for children to see. It's important for me to see. And like, I have all these inspirations that are like sparking right now from this conversation. And I'm just really grateful that you came and said yes and shared your wisdom with the Woke Wisdom podcast and this community. I'm just so grateful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's definitely been a healing journey to have this conversation with you. So thank you.
Yeah. Nikki Brown, the clown. Oh, awesome.
Nikki Brown, the clown, what? Friends, if you're ever in Portland, please come check out her events and bring your kids to her events and tell people about her events, because the kind of thought she puts into the environment that our children are in, especially our Black and brown children, is so special and so needed and very healing. And I'm so glad we had this conversation. I hope that Nikki comes back and talks to us in the future. Thank you for joining us for the Woke Wisdom Podcast. As always, if you liked this episode, like, share, subscribe, and most importantly, leave a review. Even if it's a one-liner, leave a review on Apple Podcasts so that people can get these messages far and wide. This is the end of the first of 3 final episodes of this podcast. Thank you for joining us. Big love. Be blessed. The original and healthy beats for this podcast were created by Quincy Davis. I put his info in the show notes. The Woke Wisdom Podcast was written, created, and edited by me, Alexandra Loves. It is a production of the Moon Garden Temple. And my guests, of course, they bring their own wisdom. If you resonate with anything you heard today, please help us spread these messages and help get the podcast growing by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. It just takes a few clicks. Clickety click, clickety click, click, click. You can contact me or the podcast at wokewisdompodcast@gmail.com. And look, I used to read the disclaimer at the end of every episode. I'm not doing that anymore. It's too long. If you really want to see the disclaimer, it's on our website or it's at the end of our very first episode, Orientation and Welcome. And if you're new to this podcast, I highly suggest you check that episode out. It's awesome. It kind of lays the land for what we talk about here and the way we roll. So thank you, everyone. Be blessed, and we'll catch you on the next one.